Chef Taylor here, and today we're going to be making another recipe for the Rooks to Cooks Lunch Club. Today we're working on a roasted red pepper and tomato soup, and we're going to make a grilled cheese to serve alongside that because that's a classic combo that everybody likes. The first thing we're going to do is work on our roasted red peppers. So I've gone ahead and roasted mine already. I did these in the oven, 450 degrees for about 20 minutes, and you can see that they're nicely charred on the sides. And then I put them into a bowl, cover them with plastic wrap, and this lets them steam. That steam makes it really easy for us to get the skins off, so that's what we're going to work on doing now. This is a bit of a messy job, so we want to make sure we've got a workstation set up and we have nice clean hands because we're going to be using our hands and the knife to work on breaking down these roasted red peppers. So I'm going to work with one at a time. I'll move this bowl out of the way for now. So first thing I want to do is work on getting that skin off. So you can use your bench scraper, your hands, or the back of your knife. I'm going to use the back of my knife. And where you see that wrinkled skin, I just want to go against it and start peeling it off, okay? Have a container nearby that you can have for your compost. We take the skins off our roasted red peppers for a couple reasons. For one, we have this charred flavor here, that super intense dark flavor. We don't want that in our soup, but also the skins aren't going to blend up smoothly. Anytime you're making something with roasted red peppers, you want to get rid of that skin so that you get a nice smooth product at the end. So I'm going to work on getting the skin off all the way around my pepper. And you can see because I've let them cool down, I've let them steam in that bowl covered with plastic wrap, it's not too hard to get all of this skin off. If there's a little bit left, that's okay, but the majority of it is what we're looking for. All right. Once I've got the skin removed, then we're going to work on getting the seeds and the stem out of our pepper. So I'm going to just pull the stem out, and this will come out really easy because my pepper's cooked. You can see that there's some seeds attached to that. I'm going to slice this guy open. And this is filled with liquid. So this is just some of the juice from the peppers from when they were roasting. That's why we want to make sure we have a nice big cutting board. These juices aren't going to roll away. Any last little bit of skin I'm going to get off now. We're also cooling our peppers down before we do this so that I can handle them with my hands. I'm not worried about burning myself. So much juice inside my peppers, but that's okay because that's part of the flavor. Roasting the peppers brings out some sweet and smoky notes in them, and it just intensifies their flavor. We really want that flavor to stand up to the tomatoes that are going to go into our soup as well. So as I'm working on this, I want to make sure that my juices aren't rolling off my cutting board, and I'm getting rid of any of those seeds. Those seeds aren't going to blend up smoothly in our soup either, so we want to make sure that those are all out of the way. And then once I've got my board clean again, I'm going to work on dicing up my peppers. I'm going to take a quick break just to get my cutting board cleaned up, and when we come right back, I'll be dicing up these peppers with you. All right, chefs, I've got my roasted red peppers all cleaned up here, and I've given my hands a wash as well. So I'm going to work on dicing these up now. So I'm going to lay a couple peppers together. I'm going to start by cutting them into strips. Now these can be a little bit slippery, so make sure that your hands are tucked neatly in so there's no chance of you hurting yourself. And I'm just gonna roughly dice these. Our soup is actually gonna get blended today after we finish cooking it all together, so you don't need to worry too much about them being super tiny, but we do wanna give our blender a hand, so that's why we do a little bit of a chop now. And you can see that after I finished cleaning up my peppers, I cleaned off my board. So I wanted to make sure I got rid of any of that excess skin or any of those loose seeds that might be hanging around so that none of those end up in my soup. Some other veggies that you need to dice up for this soup are our onions. So you're going to dice those up. If you need a refresher on how to dice those onions, I've got an explanation in some of my other videos here for the Rooks to Cooks Lunch Club. And you're also going to need some garlic for this soup. All right, that's my peppers all good to go and diced up. I'm gonna get these into my bowl and the rest of my mise en place ready. And when we come back, we're gonna start cooking our soup. All right, chefs, so we're just about ready to get started cooking our roasted red pepper and tomato soup. So I've got all my mise en place here ready to go, everything in its place. I have some fresh basil from my very own basil plant, my minced garlic. This is some vegetable stock. You could use vegetable stock, chicken stock, or water even, just depends on what you have in your pantry at home. I have my diced onions. Again, if you need a refresher on how to dice the onions or mince the garlic, you can check out one of my other Rooks to Cooks Lunch Club videos where I go through that process with you. I have some whole tomatoes here that I just took out of the can. You can use diced tomatoes or crushed tomatoes even, whatever you have easily ready for you at home. And then of course our diced roasted red peppers. So we're just about ready to get started. I'm gonna go ahead and turn my burner on, move my pot out of the way. If you're cooking along at home, make sure you've got an adult nearby who's able to help you get that burner started. I'm gonna add my vegetable oil into my pot. And the very first thing to go in, I bet you can guess what it's gonna be. It's going to be our onions. We're gonna get our onions sweating. Now again, sweating means that we're looking to cook them until they're clear and translucent, but they're not browned at all. We just want to evaporate some of that water and intensify the flavor of our onions. Now I'm using a nice big soup pot here, probably a little bit bigger than I need for the amount of soup that I'm making, and that's because this is gonna make it easier when it goes to blending. We're gonna cook all this soup and get everything nice and softly simmered together, and then we're going to blend it. There's two ways of doing that. You can either take it out and put it into a blender or a food processor, but I'm gonna be using an immersion blender or a stick blender. And when you use a stick blender, you want a little bit of extra space to keep things contained inside the pot. I want to try to get out of this without splattering any tomato sauce on my white chef jacket, so that's why I have a nice big pot here today. Now again, I'm looking for those signs that my onions are cooking. I want to hear that sizzle of the hot oil in my pan and smell my onions, and I'm checking to see if they're turning clear or translucent. I want to avoid browning them as much as I can. Now to serve alongside the soup, we are going to be making a grilled cheese today because that's everybody's favorite combo. That was my special treat I used to get to have if I was homesick from school, with some tomato soup and a grilled cheese that my Nana made for me. So I'm happy to be making this today with you for our Rooks to Cooks Lunch Club. So once again, I want to cook those onions until they're clear and translucent. You don't want to get any browning on there. I don't want to sweeten them up. And once they're nice and translucent, I'm going to go ahead and add my garlic in. We always add the garlic in after the onions are done sweating because the garlic is cut a lot smaller and we want to make sure the garlic isn't going to burn. So I'm going to cook this together for about a minute until the garlic is really fragrant and smelling really good in here. The whole time I'm cooking, I want to have an eye on what's going on inside my pot and give it a stir every once in a while so no corners are getting too browned. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start adding in my vegetables now. So I've got my roasted red peppers that are going to go right in. That's where most of the flavor from this soup is going to come from, is those roasted red peppers that we worked on cleaning up earlier. Give that a stir. And I'm going to add both of my things of tomatoes in. So once again, I'm using whole tomatoes, but you can use diced or crushed, whatever you've got in your pantry. And I'm going to break up those whole tomatoes a little bit with my spoon, just to give them a bit of a head start, releasing some of those juices. I'm trying to pour everything into my pot nice and gentle so I don't splatter myself with any tomato. Alright, breaking up those whole tomatoes in my pot. You can see how I just want to burst them open to get some of that juice out. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my vegetable stock right in there. This will just help with the final consistency of the soup. We don't want it to be too thick when we go to blend it up. And my fresh basil from my very own basil plant that I'm lucky enough to have in my home here. I'm gonna add those in. All right, at this point you may have noticed I'm missing a key ingredient that we put in a lot of our recipes here. I don't have any salt in here yet, so I'm gonna go ahead and season up with some salt now. And then later, when everything's had a chance to simmer and get to know each other in my pot, I'll give it a taste and adjust the seasoning again after blending. All right, everything's looking pretty good in my pot. I'm gonna leave this to simmer for 15 to 20 minutes so everything gets nice and soft, and then I'll blend it all up and we'll be back to show you our finished soup and make our grilled cheese together. See you in just a few. All right, chefs, so our soup has been simmering now for about 20 minutes and it's looking pretty soft. It's smelling really good, so I'm ready to start blending this up. Now I'm going to be using my immersion blender today, or stick blender. This is one of my favorite tools for making soup with. And what this does is it allows me to blend my soup right in my pot, so I don't need to transfer it to anything else, and I can control the consistency that I want. I want to go for like a nice smooth soup today to go alongside our grilled cheese. If you don't have one of these at home, you can blend this up in a blender. I would just leave the little top piece off because there's going to be some steam because the soup is hot. You could also do this in a food processor. So any way that you have of blending it up and getting it nice and smooth, that'll work. Just make sure that someone is helping you out, getting those appliances up and running, and be cautious because the soup is hot and we don't want to have our blenders blowing out. So make sure you leave that little keyhole piece on the top open. I'm going to go ahead and do a few blends of this. It is going to splatter a little bit. That's just what happens when you use an immersion blender, but that's why we have our big pot. So most of that splatter is going to be happening inside my pot. I'm going to take a few minutes to continue blending this up, and I'll show you what it looks like when we come back. This is where I'm at so far. It'll be fully smooth the next time you see our soup. Alright chefs, so you can see I've got my soup fully blended up now and ready to go. It's still nice and warm, so let's get our grilled cheese going. This will come together really quickly. I'm going to get my burner turned on to a medium heat, and I'm going to add my butter right to my pan. Get the butter melting. So I've got some nice egg bread today that I'm going to be using for my grilled cheese, but you can use whatever sliced bread you have at home. And I also have some shredded cheddar cheese. This is what's in my fridge, but if you've got cheese slices at home or even some nice cheddar that you're going to slice up yourself, you can put whatever you want inside your grilled cheese. I'm just going to move my pan around a bit so I can get that butter melting into all the sides of my pan and get my first piece of bread in. I don't want to cook it too high of a heat for this grilled cheese because I want to make sure that the bread is going to toast at the same time as the cheese is melting. There's nothing sadder than if you cut into a grilled cheese and the cheese isn't fully melted, so we don't want to go super high heat for this. We also don't want to burn that butter that we're using. Alright, I'm going to add my first slice of bread in, and I'm going to build my sandwich right in my pan. So with my shredded cheese, I'm going to pile it up, make a nice layer all the way around my piece of bread here. I want to make sure I have cheese in every bite of my sandwich. And put my other piece of bread right on top and give it a little press. I'm going to let this cook for about 2 minutes on each side so that I get it nice and toasty golden brown and the cheese in the center has a chance to melt fully. Now, while this is cooking, I want to talk about a very important part of making a grilled cheese is how you cut it. I grew up with my Nana always making me grilled cheese, and she would cut it into triangles. So for me, that's the only way that I believe that you should cut a grilled cheese. If you grew up with them cut into squares or cut into 4 triangles, you do whichever is your favorite way of enjoying your grilled cheese, but I know I'm going to have mine cut in half into triangles and enjoy it alongside my roasted red pepper and tomato soup. I can hear now that little bit of sizzling of my butter starting to melt, get that bread nice and crispy. I'm going to give it a little bit of a move around my pan, make sure that butter is really soaking into that bread, and let it go 1 more minute before I flip my grilled cheese. Now, because I'm using cheddar cheese that's already been shredded, I really want to make sure that none of it falls out when I go to flip my grilled cheese over. So I've got my handy spatula here, and I'm going to use my other hand to carefully hold everything together so I can flip it over without losing any of that precious cheese. Do a quick check underneath. A few more seconds to get that nice and golden brown before I flip it over. Key thing here is making sure that everything else is ready to go. It only takes about 5 minutes to make your grilled cheese, but your soup needs to be fully done so that you can sit down and enjoy lunch with your family as soon as you're done making the grilled cheese. Alright, I'm getting ready to flip this over. Nice and perfectly golden brown grilled cheese. And I'm going to cook for another 2 minutes on this side before I move it out of my pan. Once it's out of my pan, then I'm going to slice it in half and we're ready for lunch. Alright chefs, so my grilled cheese is looking nice and toasty. I'm going to go ahead and get that out of the pan, turn my burner off and move my pan out of the way, and we're ready to slice. So I'm going to slice in half, move this on over to my plate, and you can see that ooey gooey cheese on the inside there. And my soup is all ready to go. So like I said, I blended this up so it's nice and smooth. If your soup is a little bit too thick and you want it a little bit thinner, you can always add a little bit more stock to finish it out. I'm ready to go ahead and enjoy my roasted red pepper tomato soup with my grilled cheese, and I hope you are as well. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Rooks to Cooks Lunch Club meeting, and I hope to cook with you all again soon. Thanks, chefs!